Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Everyman's Odyssey podcast, where we explore the challenges and values men face today and how to become better men through sharing stories and ideas. I'm your host and founder of the podcast, Cole McClure. For our very first episode, I'd like to talk about why the show exists and what are the guiding principles that will move us through each discussion. I believe most, if not all men, must at some point confront themselves with a sort of internal reckoning. You have to develop a knowledge of who you really are, apart from any external influences, such as your job, your friends, significant other, etc. For me, leaving the military was the catalyst for this process. Now, to be fair, I probably should have started this process a lot sooner. By the time I joined the Army, I was already a married man, so I'm a little behind the game not figuring this out earlier. But either way, I had truly believed that as a young man, the Army and I had this way of showing each other the kind of man that I was. I would say, "This is my best, all that I can do." And the Army would always respond with, "No, I know you can do more, so I won't accept less." And this is a push and a demand that I am eternally grateful for, regardless of its delivery methods at times, because it's not really something that I had encountered in my life up until this point. So, for example, my first time hitting muscle failure in basic training was the first time I had hit muscle failure in my entire life. So, it's good to find that within yourself and to have something that pushes you to know that when you think you're all out of gas and there's nothing left you can do, you can just dig deeper and find out more. But when I left the Army, much sooner than I had anticipated or wanted really due to a medical diagnosis, I realized that I only truly knew who I was as a soldier, that part of me that the Army no longer needed. So at 22 years old, I had a crisis of identity, and it truly felt like a crisis. And that's part of the problem I mentioned earlier. You can't let something external define who you are. You can let it assist you in discovering and developing who you are, but you always need to be able to make that distinction, even when it comes to being a soldier during a time of war. My problem was asking the Army to tell me who I was in the first place, and I spent a long time actively resisting learning that lesson. But an incredible amount of both struggles and blessings would occur in the years that followed, which, as a side note, that's just what life is, a series of struggles and blessings and how you respond to them. But eventually, by the grace of God and my wife's incredible love and patience, I came to the realization of who I really was. Even if I'm not a soldier, I still feel a calling and a responsibility to protect people. And even if it's not my job, I have a desire to serve people. And after seeing so many people in pain, in particular regarding the suicide epidemic, which I had known too closely, too often, I knew it would always be my job to love people. So there it was. No matter what my job is, where I am, or who I am with, I know the man that I am. I am a man who must absolutely protect, serve, and love the people around me. I had finally learned to be defined by my principles, not my titles. And becoming the man that I want to be is as simple as incrementally improving each of those core values over the course of my life, one day at a time. And maybe that's what the Army was showing me all along. After all, it's like Jesus said, "Greater love has no man than this, that one lay down his life for his friends." And that is a principle that is readily on display within the military organization. But perhaps I was too immature or just not in the Army long enough to realize what I was actually learning. But armed with that knowledge now, it has had a profound impact on every aspect of my life. It shapes who I am as a husband, a father, a friend, a citizen. In the years since my time in the military, I have gone on to do quite a few things that I'm very proud of, but nothing compares to the relationships I have invested in as a husband and a father that are directly related to learning this lesson. In each endeavor I have undertaken on my own Odyssey as a man of purpose, whether that be a personal endeavor as a family man or professional endeavors ranging from aviation to veteran services to law enforcement, all of these things I've experienced reinforce this idea that wherever you are, there are always ways to fulfill your calling as a man to protect, serve, and love. Now, these ideals are obviously positive things to focus on, but they can feel a little too vague or abstract to be actionable, especially if you feel like, I'm already doing all these things, so I'm good, right? But let's take a couple minutes and break these things down into practical objectives that we can implement in our daily lives. So let's start with protection. Now, right out the gate, the idea of needing to protect those around you on a daily basis by means of physical force is pretty unlikely. So how can we become better protectors every day? Well, to start, let's expand our concept of protection. And I don't mean that to neglect the physical aspect of protection. I think physical health and some level of familiarity with violence and self-defense is vital. This is an area that I actually find myself lacking in, and I'm taking steps to improve upon. But aside from the obvious physical aspects of this fundamental, the biggest thing that we must protect ourselves and others from is lies and deception. Our world has become absolutely saturated with lies and obfuscations. And the only way to protect against lies is with the truth. So, as a man, you need to strive to know the truth and those who speak it. Know where to go for reliable information so that your mind is equipped to protect your family and your community from all manner of falsehoods. So you need to be able to read trustworthy material, do your own research, listen and engage in conversations with individuals that challenge your own presuppositions and ideas, and be ready to defend your own. My goal is that this podcast cultivates that type of community. The next core value is perhaps easier to express and act out, but much more loosely defined, and that is to serve. Service can be easily explained as just taking action to improve the lives of those around you. Now, the first thing to consider is always start in your own home. That is crucial. So maybe you have found a project or a volunteer opportunity that you're really excited about, and that's a great thing, an important part of serving your community. But if you don't first recognize and meet the needs of those closest to you, like your spouse or your children, then you're not ready to start making those moves outside of your own house. So once you are confident that those first priority needs are being met and you have the capacity to take on more, start to look at the needs of your community or local organizations that you could help with. Now, the most efficient and effective path would be to match skills or passions that you already have with identified needs in your community that match up with that. But if you start to feel like maybe you're not qualified to serve because you don't have these skills or characteristics that you feel are necessary to contribute in your community, well, that's a great opportunity to learn something new. Oftentimes, what's needed most is just willing people ready to serve where they are needed. So just start by showing up. And service doesn't have to mean finding some nonprofit or program. Acts of selfless service can be contagious. So don't be afraid to, quote, think small. Maybe be someone your neighbors can rely on, or look for opportunities to help a stranger throughout your day. Once you're looking, you'll see these small opportunities are all around you. The final core value is, of course, love. And as you may already be aware, it is the most difficult and the easiest and the most difficult of the three to do well. When it comes to loving those closest to you, it is important to know and show love in the way that best reaches them. So make time to listen, observe, and ask questions to better show your love for your spouse, your children, your family, and your friends. I remember a time when I was still in the Army and I was in Germany, but my wife was already back stateside. And those circumstances and separation, especially with a new baby, lent itself to conflict. My sergeant at the time said something to me that I still think about during times of tension or frustration. Are you ready for this? Quote, "Don't be a dick." That's pretty simple, right? Because when you truly love someone, it rarely really matters who is right or wrong on things. And when it is something big and consequential, it's still not worth sacrificing the kindness and respect that you should be showing them. See? Simple, but not always easy. Now, as you look outward and strive to love everyone, I really like something that St. Augustine said. He said, "What does love look like? It has the hands to help others. It has the feet to hasten to the poor and needy. It has eyes to see misery and want. It has the ears to hear the sighs and sorrows of men. That is what love looks like." I found this quote while preparing for this episode, and I think it really encapsulates what we're talking about here. By acting out these concepts of protection and service, you're inevitably also acting out the love we are called to show each other. Now, these are things that took me longer than I would have liked to learn. But the funny thing is, I don't think this to be at all unique to me. I just had to learn it my own way. Though I suspect I could have learned this much faster had I focused on love and relationship instead of isolation and self-loathing. As men, regardless of where you are in life, we are designed and called to protect, serve, and love those within the reach of our influence. And we can be much more effective at this when we utilize the advice and encouragement of trustworthy people around us. So maybe you're just starting out on your journey of manhood, or maybe you're about to get married and feeling that pressure that being a man really requires something deep from you. Or maybe you're enjoying retirement, but afraid of losing sight of what makes you a man now that so many responsibilities and accomplishments are in the rear view. Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, just on the grind, like me. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, know that you can do more, so don't accept less. And don't let that thought discourage or intimidate you either. On the contrary, it would be pretty discouraging to think that you had maxed out your potential, no room left to grow, and still life to go. So find joy and hope in knowing that you're flawed and have every intention of improving upon those flaws every day until you die. Then you can know that you have lived your whole life on and with purpose. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of who you're listening to, but more importantly, what this podcast may offer you and the things that we're going to cover. I started this podcast because I wanted to create a community of men from all walks and stages of life to gather together to encourage each other to pursue greatness. And the basic makings of a great man can be defined rather simply: protect, serve, and love. Now, chances are that at least some of you are already listening to voices like Jocko Willink or John Lovell with Warrior Poet Society or Ryan Mickler. And if you're not, I would highly encourage you to do so. Those are a few men who have influenced me in this space and inspired me to start this podcast. And what I love about them is that they seem to have reached a pinnacle. They've attained the proverbial mountaintop and now are reaching down to help others along the path. What I'm wanting to bring to that conversation is the perspective of a man who is still very much on that path. And I think that as men, we're always on that path. And if we link arms and are there for each other and tell our stories amongst each other and talk through these things, that we will get there faster and stronger. But there's a lot more content on the way, including interviews, group discussions, more topical discussions like this one, as we all learn new or better ways to execute our callings as men to protect, serve, and love our families and communities. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, so I'm excited to see where it goes. And of course, if you have any questions or feedback, hit me up on social media, or you can email me at everymansodyssey@outlook.com. Thanks again for listening, guys. Take care.